everybody. How are you? Welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you're joining us again. And we hope that you are having a wonderful, peaceful day, whether you're joining us live or for replays. Feel free to pop into the chat and let us know where you're joining us from so that we can say hi and we can stay in touch. And please also let us know one way we can help you in between our lives. I am so delighted to introduce you to the absolutely amazing Whitney of Wave of Mind. Whitney's a gift from the universe. She's also a gift from amazing Shel Shapiro, who we both adore. So, Shel, celebration in the house. Here
Cheers,
is to you,
Shell.
Shel. And without further ado, I'd love to give Whitney just a little bit to let you know about her gems and some of her talents before we get into a deeper discussion. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. Super excited to be here. I want to introduce Wave of Mind. We are a collection of people who care about mental and emotional wellness, but more so wanted to take that to the next level. And instead of just kind of understanding topics that are important, create a way to practice the tools that are rooted in behavioral science and that are evidence-based and are known to work, and then be able to apply them to our lives in ways that address our specific concerns at that time. And so the product that we created is a series of 6 journals. They look like this. And what you can learn is whether you're doing it as an individual or with a group, or you're doing it in order to drive more insights for yourself such that you can be a better leader or a better parent or a better friend, that whatever it is that you are going into the 15 minutes a day that you will practice, each day you will build on the strengths that you already have and lean more into facing the discomfort that is changing the things that we want to improve on. So that's a short intro to what we are. You get 24 different specific techniques that you practice over 6 months, and super excited to talk with you all about ways in which, whether you use these journals or not, the tools can transform your life and as they have mine and so many others. So super excited to be with you.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for introducing your amazing journals. And I'm really delighted for our listeners who've heard me talk with a couple of guests and just in general about Ignite Trust, which is a passion of mine. In the process of our trust journey, I was so delighted to receive Whitney's first journal, Emotional Awareness. And Whitney, this, I was so excited, not just because of beyond generous gift from an amazing, wonderful woman, but the process just of reminding us, as you're talking about amazing products that are available for individuals, for organizations, for teams that can be used in so many different ways in our world. At the same time, I love journaling. And your process of taking us kind of through a guided journal, which is kind of interesting. It brings me back to, what we just started with as our kind of our question, which is about increasing our awareness and how we kind of can stay focused on self-discovery. Can you share some more about that part of this, how individuals and teams maybe can use this, whether we use it daily or we're catching up by journaling over a weekend? What are
Yeah.
good ways to just get started and focus inward on this?
Yeah. So I think one way to connect to the power of this type of process is we know that we can't solve a problem without first identifying the problem. And we've all experienced times where we kind of go, oh, this is a problem, and then we jump to a solution. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. And we're kind of like, I don't know, maybe I didn't try hard enough, or maybe I need this other tool. And, the process of iteration is important, and we're always going to be experimenting in our lives, whether that be in a work um, context or a personal context or any other aspect of life. But really, the core of what these journals do and what practices within them do, which there are other ways to access those, is help us as we're going through our lives in the busy and sometimes chaotic way that life is, that we get to take a few moments to connect with what is in our world, in our internal experience at that moment. And I think this practice of pausing, it's known to be good, but doing it can be really challenging when we don't necessarily have a guide or a structure or even really an approachable way to begin starting that. And so that really is the foundation of what our product does. We add in additional tools in which you get to learn and apply and practice and build upon day by day. But the real core of it is each of us has so much wisdom within us. And when you talk about trust, learning what it is that our bodies or our spirits or our minds or whatever it is that we connect most to is trying to tell us, trying to guide us, trying to teach us, being able to trust that that is something that not only exists but is something that we can rely on and build up that practice of trust. There's just so much more power in there than I can say in a few minutes, but really that's something that I think is really what makes really the foundation for people to be able to create long-lasting change.
That is beyond a mic drop. I think
So
the
sweet.
foundational part, as you're saying, and I'll say it from the perspective of having become a mental fitness intelligence coach.
Yeah.
The practice of daily trying to, whether it's meditating or doing something tactile, to kind of bring us to the present, and not necessarily from the perspective of trying to suppress our emotions, but the
Mm.
reminder to kind of breathe deeply and kind of focus as we're navigating them, or
Yeah.
as we're, in and I loved it from an amazing human design coach, Alana, taught us Hara how to center. So the
Mm.
process of whether I like to do writing pages in the early still of the morning. Some
Mm.
mornings I can wake up and really write like 5,000 words by 7 or 8 in the morning.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I'll have days where I'm not remembering to journal, and
Yeah.
I'm, kind of focused inward, but at the same time, the reminder of the deliberate practice part.
Yeah.
Because some people think a practice means I have to do it every day. I need to do it at a certain time.
Right.
It's like going to
Mm.
the gym. It's like, showing up at your coffee place for your coffee order, or arriving for a certain train, rushing on your way
Mm.
to work or to some other engagement. But I think that the practice of busyness is such a big part of our day to day.
Yeah.
It's a big part of our world. I'm here today on a lot less sleep than I normally am,
Mm.
and you work around that, and you try to focus. But I think what I love as your reminder is the wellness part of it,
Mm.
whether it's used individually, whether it's used in a group, whether it's used with a practitioner, whether
Yeah.
it's a writing circle, whether it's maybe it's getting a set of journals and making a time to do it as a family, the same way we would get together and pray or sit down and have a meal together. That's
Mm.
where I think that I really love of it, from the centering part,
Mm.
because we lose focus. We're everywhere, you
Yeah.
know. The art of busyness, the art of not always being fully present, even though we really would like to.
Yeah. It's so good. I feel like the presence piece, there's so much to learn there because I think many of us can relate to that busyness and that essentially never done feeling. Something needs to be fixed, something needs doing, something went wrong. And all of those things are likely true at the same time. And so, like I think many of us have experienced, well, okay, well, if I just hustle more, I will work my way out of this feeling of constant chaos or constant unease or really just this feeling that like I'm not allowed to care for myself because there's other things that need doing. And so I think in relating to that experience, whatever words it might relate to you, there's also this observation that we have of other people where we say, like, that person's like a little bit more frantic and like emotionally reactive right now. And like they're mainly not able to see me and hear me. And we're really not able to kind of work together on the same plane in ways that feel like they would be effective. And so we can see that in other people, perhaps more clearly than we can see it in ourselves. And of course, we're all dealing with different things in different degrees, and the ways in which our internal distress may be expressed externally is going to be different too. So we're going to all have different ways of understanding that. But I bring that up is because I think if you can relate to both of these types of experiences, there's room to explore. There's room for more self-discovery. There's more room to say, okay, well, if the goal maybe isn't to like eliminate chaos, right? Because like that sounds really good to be a goal, but like how does one go about doing that? Maybe the goal is instead to observe it, to examine it, to understand it. Because then there's actually a lot more vision to be able to sort through and in many of our experiences reduce chaos, increase consciousness, and then also be able to spread compassion and not only be more efficient at our jobs, but more connected to ourselves and the people that matter most to us.
Wow. I think the part that's really hitting me about what you're saying is many of us sometimes are so used to being in an emotional or chaotic or pressure cooker kind of situation
Yeah.
where you need to perform a certain way, or you're expected to show up a certain way, or to check our egos and our emotions at the door. You're also reminding me, and I want to thank you, Libby Edmonds, for sharing with me recently. There's a state of heart, like an annual report from 6 Seconds, who Yvette Bethel of Organizational Soul introduced me to
Oh,
6 Seconds in the process of getting certified in trust. And they had a study on empathy, on what really, and someone else shared a cost of what happens when you're at work and your employment situation is less than desirable. The leaders
yeah.
who are in charge of your culture may create cultures where your stress levels are kind of high, and of the like over like 300, almost 400 billion they thought that
Mm,
productivity costs would be for organizations. But I think
mm,
the hard part about emotional wellness is people figure if we're checking our egos or our emotions at the door, we're just supposed to dial in, stay focused
yeah.
on whatever the corporate goals are, or the
Mm,
organizational goals are, or the mission or the values, and what our
mm,
jobs are about. And I think that reminder, as you're saying, there were levels of chaos underneath all of that. So it's
yeah.
almost if someone's using one of your journals, for example, at different times during the day. Do some of the guided exercises are the ones that you can do in a really short period of time for those on like a really tight schedule?
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, the very first week, I think this is something that is really interesting and effective to practice with or without our journals, which is to start setting timers on your phone or your any device, or maybe you just decide times of day that you remember, and at least 3, but hopefully 5 or more times throughout the day, pause to check in with what it is that you're feeling. And we recommend using what's called like a feelings wheel or emotions wheel. So you can Google, there's many different variations of that, all of which are really effective. And just pause. It could be even for 30 seconds. Look at this wheel and be like, which one of these words resonates most, right? Because also, many of our feelings are complex to the extent that they might feel like they are multiple layers of different things, and that could be true. But just with this experience, just choose one that resonates most with you. There's not a right answer. Rate it from 1 to 10, and then just keep log of this. And even as short of 3 days, 7 is better, but even in 3 days, you'll look back at these, say, 15 entries, and you'll be shocked at how many different things you feel and experience throughout the day. And what's so powerful with this is we, have perceptions of what kind of an emotional being is, right? Especially in work context, we have kind of like leave your emotions at the door, just like you said. And that's just like absolutely impossible. Who we are, what we feel, what we think, none of those can be separated. I think what we do believe is we want to be centered enough such that we're not emotionally reactive.
Mm.
But having and experiencing emotions is very healthy. Repressing them actually exacerbates emotional reactivity, right? You're loading the cannon, and maybe you can like hold that explosive down for a long time. Maybe some people are really good at that for a really long time. Many of us have done so to the point where it explodes in a way that many can see, or implodes to the point where we make ourselves unwell.
Boy, you should see the emojis and Shell's calling it out, you know.
We love you, Shell.
We do, we
We
do.
love you. So I add all of this to say there's many things that you will learn when you track and then observe what it is that you have written over the course of a few days. And what this does, it gives us not only more insight into the humanness of our experience, but it allows us to create space between what we feel and who we are.
Mm.
That there doesn't need to be shame or judgment or meaning, even. We don't actually necessarily need to define that because I feel this way, it means this or that sometimes there's meaning there, but sometimes the meaning that we impose on it is related to what we may call a limiting belief that's underlying a lot of really how we see ourselves and how we see the world and how we go about life. Like there's so many parts to it, but just this simple 3-day exercise. I won't tell you all of the things that you're going to learn because you're going to learn so much more than I could tell you, and it's going to be different than what I learn or whatever other people learn. But I promise you that you will learn something that will take you from a place of unknowing, not necessarily like, we're all going to start from a different place, but you're going to see a new way to approach the day after that. And it's going to be small, but it's going to be exciting. And I would love to hear about how you guys do that for yourselves and what you guys learn.
Wow. I think the part as you were saying before about the emotions wheel, and I'm laughing because I have one here relatively nearby. Didn't realize I needed to pull it out because
It's okay.
we were gonna do. Yes, Andrea, it definitely is powerful, and I think the part about the what Shell had written before about exploring not just
Mm,
what's coming up, when it's coming up, and
mm,
maybe the
yeah.
evolution of what's happening to us within a certain time period,
Right.
within a certain day. But I think the boomerang effect, and I was having a conversation in Angie Alexander's Sage Leadership Room, and we were having a
Mm,
really wonderful conversation about leadership and kind of the concept of likability
mm,
or when that kind of shows up. So we were discussing it in terms of leadership and whether leaders are likable and how in the process maybe of feeling like you're in a culture, whether it's a culture of toxic positivity or what can
right.
feel like a culture of toxic negativity. And
Yeah.
I worked for 13 years in a pressure cooker environment like that.
Mm,
And the two different ways, there are some times where the chaos isn't manageable internally or externally.
yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I love, that you've got a system of tools that can be used individually or
Mm,
collectively, and that peaking even at the emotions wheel to kind of center, focus. Here's where I'm at.
yeah.
This is my word for now. Whether I can journal about it now, or I am using the word to journal about it later. And I laugh
Yeah.
because one of my coaches was helping me plan my first retreat, and it was going to be a hybrid retreat, live,
Yeah.
virtual, and some elements a combination. So the hybrid part, and we talked about it, and we talked about it over a meal, and I had a sheet of paper, and he didn't feel that it went well because I didn't take a lot of notes,
Mm,
and I had taken a note of a bullet point, words kind of to capsulize the concepts, almost as if it was a banner. And each word, I then later went back and wrote some notes on it. And he laughed because he says, I wasn't sure it was a really productive conversation. We talked so long about so many different things. He
mm,
says, you really didn't write a lot. And I know you take a lot of notes. I said, I really was trying to drink in everything you were saying
yeah.
and really absorb it. And he says, well, what'd you get out of it? I said, I'm just starting to work on the document. It's going to be a little long. Do you mind if I share it with you? He said, sure. How long could it be? You didn't have anything written on the piece of paper. I wrote 12 pages.
Wow.
And I laugh because that sometimes is what happens. And maybe it's, I like to write. I'll be really honest. I got that from Pop. It's kind of, a love and a
Mm,
passion. But I think the
beautiful.
thing that's interesting about that is people think you're being brief and that the
Mm,
bullet point is some sort of summary, but really looking at that emotions wheel, kind of, here's where I'm at. And I
right.
love your suggestion about recording the time of day. I opened your beautiful journal 3 weeks ago,
Yeah. Mm,
and I wanted to write in it, and it was a little hectic, so I didn't have a chance.
yeah.
And then I wanted to write in it again, and it was a little hectic, and you'll laugh because I've had my emotional awareness journal with me now for almost a month. I packed it a month ago,
Mm,
and I'm really looking forward to curling up with it.
yeah.
But I think the thing about the check in individually, as
Yeah.
opposed to just the collective check in, you have to check in as a leader, you have to check in
Yeah.
as a participant, a facilitator, a volunteer, a board member, a stakeholder. You check in with your children, you check in so
Yeah.
many different places. But I love that idea of kind of envisioning a monopoly board where when you stop at go, you pick up a pen and you
Yeah.
do an emotions check. And it would be interesting to see what it would be like to when you do go back and you compare it,
Mhm.
like Michelle was saying before about the looking back to see the journal. How do you
Yeah.
help people use their journal as a work in progress as opposed to a work of art?
Yeah. Oh, ooh. I love how you phrase that. And I have a wonderful design team, and we've changed the product in terms of making the content and the structure and the methodology more robust and effective, and such that more people can apply it wherever they are approaching it from. But also just the designers who created such a beautiful experience, and I'm so proud of them and how it's come together. And we do hear that on occasion. It's just like, oh, it's so pretty. And, one way that we help people to move through that is, within the journal, there's guidance. And then within our community, there's guidance. And before anyone starts writing in the journal, they have to make a commitment to themselves with a signature in the journal that is a promise to themselves that there isn't a perfect way, that however they show up on that specific day is the best that they can do. And we have these perceptions of what the best is and all of that. And that's exactly what we're moving through, is that there's not a perfect version of me that I'm competing against.
Mhm.
That language is important to me. However language works for other people, that's okay. Yes, I want to constantly be improving upon the best that I have and the best that I have to offer. And I think one of the quotes that we repeat in our community pretty often, and I think tells this nuanced approach pretty well, is a quote from Carl Rogers. He's one of the what we call kind of fathers of modern psychology. And his quote is, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change."
Mm, mm,
And there's just
mm,
so much there that actually, if I'm saying, "Whitney, today your workout was trash because it wasn't as good as the workout from last week or when you were 18 or whatever," is that helping me in that workout? Is that helping me in tomorrow's workout? Is that helping me in this moment right now, hours later? Am I carrying, stress or perceptions of myself and my capability? Right? There's just so much there that more than we can describe in this conversation.
mm,
Um, but kind of tying back to your question is that there's not a perfect way to use our journals or to use any approach to increased mindfulness, greater self connection, self discovery, and also improved emotional awareness, emotional regulation, and from there effective communication and aligning one's behaviors with one's values. All of these things are connected. All of these things are taught and reinforced throughout our journals. But however you go about this journey for yourself, if you hold on to the ideas that who I am now isn't enough, and that I'm not going to be okay until, it's going to make the journey a lot longer and a lot more painful. The journey is going to be so distressing at times because we have to face things that are not comfortable, and that
mm,
maybe for survival we had to distract from or repress because we didn't have the tools to work through them at the time. So there's no way to move forward towards where we want to go, whether that be, a better partner or a better leader or a better friend or a parent, any of these things. All of these things require stretching and require discomfort. And there's going to be some pain, but we don't need to add to that because of things that we believe are true, but don't have to be true. It doesn't have to be true that I'm not enough right now. I don't believe that anymore. And I've seen so many just powerful changes that come from that.
That is so deep. It you reminded me also, and I really want to thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the replay myself. Is that in the positive intelligence journey, there are saboteurs, and there's 10 of them.
Mm,
And we talk
yes.
about the judge as kind of a master saboteur, your ringmaster, so to speak. It can lead a hijack of the other saboteurs. It can take you places. That little internal voice or that version of your voice from someone who's judged you a lot currently or in the
Right.
past, or you're expecting judgment from in the future. You almost
Mm-hmm.
can hear that voice. I'll admit today, been listening a little to the little judge in the process of some really challenging projects that are happening this week. And at the same time, I absolutely laughed because a couple of people who I really love are like, you need to just do it this way.
Mm,
And a couple of other people that I really love are like, nope, need to follow your heart, follow your head. And then I've got some really good, great advice from some people I've known for a really long time. And their reminder was just take care. And reminds me of our Aunt
mm,
Ethel who used to say, and so it is. And to
mm.
reach that point of not just wisdom, or in positive intelligence, we call it like sage, of using
Yeah.
like your sage powers. But I think that balance of trauma, pain, deep emotions on the emotions wheel, and the desire to get towards that meet me on the moon that I've talked about, or that I'm wishing on a
Yeah.
star where your eyes are wide open, you're able to dream in full color. That climb can be
Mm,
really challenging. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about your system, your process. And I am
mm.
so excited that Shell and I were talking about a retreat in 2025.
Yes.
And Shell introduced me to Whitney, and I was like, we have our VIP trips.
I'm so
And
excited.
I am too. But to think of using them individually in a group
Mm,
setting, in a corporate setting, in a professional setting, in
yeah.
for some me time, for some
Hmm.
downtime, and for some safe, high quality accountability time. Because that's the
Yeah.
part that's really, really challenging. We don't always make that space
Right.
and have a graceful container like I felt the second this plastic comes off. I'm
Mm.
going to want to put my journal back every day in that plastic to keep the cover just so. So also, in the days I used to tease mom used to read my diary, like at the age, in the teenage years, trying to
Um,
stay ahead of the
yeah.
kid who was creative,
Yeah.
and wanting at the same time to keep her younger daughter, who was slightly younger than many of her classmates, a little safe. But I laugh because I almost feel like I need to lock it up to keep it
Hmm.
safe. So I think that'll be really interesting in the retreat to have a
Yeah.
space where, and I have to remember that to offer people a chance.
Hmm.
You almost need to personalize it, put your cool heart shaped bookmarks or something of your favorite color, or put it in a tablet sleeve or something exciting to kind of keep it for you. I think the thing that I love not just about today's discussion and not just about the fact that Whitney and
Hmm.
Shell, we're going to make some serious magic together at a retreat,
Yes.
but we're going to hang out again. And I really think one of these days, if Shell's still with us, have to get the two of you together as guests to kind of
Ooh, yes. That would
help
be
us
wonderful.
frame our wellness journey from the perspective of trying to generate good vibes only. Ooh, lots of hearts must be shell.
Mm.
And to celebrate must be shell, must be shell. But just to open up a path
Mm.
to explore. We know you're here. Beautiful. We know you're here. And you're also here. So
Mm.
thank you for being in our hearts too. Whitney, if there was a way for others to introduce you, your journals, your voice as a keynote speaker at conferences,
Mm.
as a leader of a breakout, in a potential sponsorship perspective, where you come and people have a chance to kind of lean in and see your magic behind, besides listening to your voice. What are spaces like that look like if we could help you create some of them?
Oh, I appreciate the question so much. I think direct messages through LinkedIn are great. We can add my email and then our business Instagram as well. All of those, are frequent and, direct lines of communication. Um, and I think ways that we can explore together, as well as you can see on our website, um, to work together beyond just our product is, we have workshops that fit for wellness specific settings that therapists and coaches that we work with as partners provide to their groups, because just like you said, there's so much power in having an individual practice and being able to explore that in a group setting such that the individual practice becomes even more rigorous and vice versa. And
Mm,
so we have, wellness specific spaces, and then, corporate spaces where we can do workshops that are, a little bit more tailored to corporate specific um, scenarios as well as language. So many of us are familiar with creating, or the concept of creating, psychological safety within workplaces, and how important emotional intelligence and core values are. It's really interesting within the corporate space how we talk about mission, vision, and values of a business. And one of the types of workshops that I'm super excited about is the mission, vision, and values of individuals. And when
mm,
those are known and expressed, that I can show up to work within my integrity because I know what my values are and I know how to behave in line with them. And I know that when something's off, how to course correct. And all of that has such an interconnected, and growth promoting effect when teams can bring that individual practice
mm,
to the problems that they're trying to solve within organizations that are all doing really important things, right? So that's kind of a kind of overall layout of some of the things that we can explore together, um, and just appreciate the conversation so much. And we have just really fantastic partners within our community that can also provide those services as well. So would love to hear from any of you and happy to answer questions outside of really any type of direct business relationship also, because this is just such an important piece of how we collectively care for ourselves and each other. And if each of us can become more and more able to approach the discomfort of the unknowing within, we can really, really show up for whatever it is that we are working towards for the people around us, for
mm.
our collective goals, and
Wow.
not have to.
I love what you're saying, especially from the course correct or the pivot perspective, because sometimes in leadership, the process of navigating or creating a legend
Yeah.
or aligning our personal mission, values, and vision
Yeah.
with the organization's coach, sometimes doesn't always seem to be the best fit. It does the day that maybe you're interviewed. It does the day maybe that you're hired. Maybe it does during your onboarding. But I remember being in a working situation and after 2 weeks saying, "What in the world am I doing here? And how quickly can I get out of here?"
Mm,
And having to really be mindful and get incredible support. And I hung out for 13 years. But I think in the process, in the emotional wellness journey, whether it's in an individual or group setting, whether you're following the prompts of your amazing journals or you're following other external prompts or another
yeah.
system. And I hope some of the positive intelligence coaches are in the house because, boy, Whitney's process just this is
Thank you.
we I adore you. We talk about elevate your blend all the time. You have totally got a system to elevate our blend and take it to really to the next level. I think the thing is also you mentioned a community.
Hmm.
How do people and for those of you who are on other platforms, check Whitney out on Instagram, on
Yeah.
Facebook, or Meta, whatever you want to call it today,
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, and you see the way to contact her on Instagram on the screen. What would be the way to not just the invitation in, but
Mm.
where is there a place where your community exists? Like, is there a membership community? Is there a coaching part of it? What, how would we learn more about that?
Yes. So right now, our community is built from Instagram. And so we have not only our followers and, our customers that we interact with there, but the partners, including, therapists, coaches, and other wellness organizations, retreats, etc. Um, those partners we work with collectively because we want not only our journals to help the people we interact with directly, but for the journals to have an impact with the genius that is some of these wonderful guides and clinicians and professionals. And so within that community, we work together to create webinars and workshops and additional ways for people who are on this journey and looking for resources that are better fit for their needs and have access to Wave of Mind if that's a good fit for them. So those are the two that exist right now within like the corporate space. The community is really kind of me, and then I make direct introductions. So that can grow over time as well. And anyone that's interested in kind of exploring a creative and innovative way to create more community within the corporate wellness space, I think that's something that I don't want to stand in the way of course. So, all of these things, I think the invitation is to allow yourself to experience the full humanity of the present moment and explore for yourself what that would mean if you had more trust in yourself, if you had more
Mm,
capacity to care for yourself throughout all these sort of things. And I think two examples come to mind, both actually in different organizations, but an executive that we worked with who whose problem was essentially team wasn't performing, all the sort of typical stuff. And he was able to learn through some of these tools ways in which he was impacting his team that he wasn't aware of. And it wasn't that it was his fault that the team was underperforming, but and he was able to address ways in which he could improve and take accountability for the ways that he was reacting in certain ways, and then was able to work through some of the difficult experiences that his employees were having, all of which were, work appropriate and focused on work, But like how we show up to work can be very much related to how we feel about ourselves or what stressors or, you know, barriers we may be facing. So it's just really fascinating how this internal work has such vast implications as well as opportunities. And then just shorter, an employee of a different organization that we worked with was able to learn how to not only manage their own internal experience to the point where they felt more capable and more safe within themselves. I think that's a good word, such that they could advocate for themselves in a way that encouraged connection and understanding rather than disconnect or a me versus you type situation. So there's just so many exciting things and so
Oh
many
my goodness,
really
Whitney, I
fantastic
am so
organizations.
excited. I can't wait for our next
Yeah.
conversation about this. I can't wait for us to start planning the retreat. I can't wait for all that lean in stuff, but I cannot thank you enough. And I hope our listeners who are joining us live or listening later remember Whitney and her great, amazing resources, not only during our individual emotional wellness journeys, but during our journeys in life, in organizations, family members, and in about 7 weeks during Mental Health Awareness Month. And afterwards, as you learn other people you can share this beautiful woman's gifts with. But Whitney, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners, our guests, our supporters, everybody who popped in recently for our, I'm calling it, celebration of our 100th episode.
Thank you, Shell.
And thank you so much, everyone, for your love, your light. Stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, and have a magnificent day filled with opportunities and possibilities.
Thank you, Mel. See you soon.